Hi guys, today we're going to talk about the large framework strategy. You might hear the word moyo. It's not as commonly used nowadays, but it is definitely instructive, especially for people who are, double digit Qs, because it's good to learn why it's good to use it because even though it is not as popular as it once was, using it can help you kind of understand why that was. Also, if you're like a double digit queue, it could also lead to a lot of games you can easily win because you can make it have like an overwhelming advantage over your opponent. So let's go into what I mean by that. So we've got the three link stars formation on the right, and there's lots of lectures I have on the three link star formation called the San Ren Se, three link stars. It's not in favor in modern Go. AlphaGo does not like putting all of its eggs in one basket. It does not like to put stones all on one side, so it prefers to have black play elsewhere. Uh, that does not mean that we have to do everything that AlphaGo says. We can try out this opening for ourselves and kind of learn how to use large frameworks for our own advantage. So because black has put everything on one side, white will approach, which is completely normal. And then black could, for example, play on the bottom. So if black responds, this is perfectly normal, then we can have a game like this. There's a lot of variations to the large framework strategy that Sanren say. I have in other videos, so you can go to those. We're not going to go into every single variation, but I want to talk about in comparison. So this one where black played at Q14 and then we had this whole series of events, black got to play the bottom and then white got to stretch his legs at the top. So what if in this case black were to just go for the bottom, right out and leave the upper right unanswered? That's a perfectly legitimate thing to do. You don't have just because your opponent plays a move in the area does not mean that you have to answer them immediately. You can think to yourself, do you have a larger strategy and do you want to follow it? Since black didn't play a move on the upper right, that does give the opponent an opportunity to add a second stone in the area to try to gain an advantage. 2 versus 1 kind of deal. In this case, this is a high pincer. So since white is threatening to close the door between the O17 stone and the Q14 stone, we're going to have to come out. So black attaches, Hane, extend. And here, some beginner level players, they remember this stone, the Q14 stone, being at A, which makes a huge difference in how you respond here. You don't want to play this move because this actually gets to be pretty nasty. The outside black stones are very much in danger, and then the corner stones are in danger, and this cuts for pretty bad. So we wanted to avoid this kind of thing. So that's why black, instead of playing here, black should use the bamboo joint, and this is very, very solid for black. Black cannot be cut. White will play the corner, and then black will turn. And as you can see, the large framework strategy comes into fruition. What do I mean by that? Well, the right side is a huge framework for territory. Black is threatening to basically take more than a fourth of the board, say between half and like not half the board, but pretty close, to swallow it all up and make territory. And that is going to leave white pretty far behind if white doesn't do something. So that's kind of the strategy what we're using, right? We're trying to basically say, I'm going to grow so big that unless you come in and do something, I'm just going to win the game. So let's go back to this move. So in the previous example, white played this double pincer because black did not play anything in the upper right. That's not the white's only option. Let's say white were to just play for the corner, very AlphaGo style, right? We want to get territory. The 3-3 point is open. Let's jump in. So which way should black block, do you think? I'm going to mark them. Black could block at A or black could block at B. So we want to try to deal with white's incoming stone. So do we cut white's stone off from its other stone at O17 or do we block at B? I want you to pause the video and think about this for a little bit. If you were black, which one would you play, A or B? All right, let's take a look at what happens when we play A. Let's say I play A. Well, white only has one choice. White has to play extend, and then black can extend. And then we can play this out. And I ask you, does white, white looks pretty comfortable, right? So white's group at R18 has definitely two eyes. All this space under here is definitely more than enough to make two eyes. So that's not even a thing right now. Since that's the case, then what about black's group on the outside, the A stones? Well, they're facing the upper left part of the board, but that's not where black's other stones are. So that from black's perspective, this whole thing is awkward. We have lots of stones, lots of thickness pointing to in areas where we don't have lots of thickness. So let's go back here. Let's say black blocks at B. I want you to kind of get a feel for this, that like blocking this way, that yes, you're allowing the white stones to connect, but I want you to kind of visually see how your stones are all linking together. They are pointing towards one another. That's what you kind of want with these large framework strategies, is you want your large walls to point at each other instead of away from each other. And you may not notice that before you start plopping stones down, but this is where you have to sort of visualize in your head. Back when we make this A or B choice, think about the moves and the shape that occurs if you play it A, like really think it through and hold that visual in your head and ask yourself, are my walls pointing towards each other? If they're not, you might be on the wrong track. So black blocks this way, white must connect to the other stones. Black plays here. Black plays like, I don't know, something else. White's play here, this tiger's mouth, is so powerful. White's shape is super strong. Black is losing liberties. It's not acceptable to let white have this space, so black gets it first. Also, it makes white weaker, and black is very strong. Black stones have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 liberties, which is very healthy. So then white will, let's say, play here. It's not the only move you can play here, but let's say white connects all of his stones. And then black will push. And let's say we have this going. So white, remember, this is a sort of a pushing battle. We don't want to let the other person kind of get ahead of us in the race. Like when our stones are grinding against each other, we want to try to put enough force to where our stones get ahead. And we don't want to lose an opportunity because then our opponent gets ahead and it becomes difficult for us. All right, so that's why black cuts here and then extends to threaten the ladder. White defends a stone and black plays here. And we can kind of see that the lower right is becoming a thing. So this is a large framework strategy. We build a framework. Now white gets a good amount of territory at the top. This is kind of the minus of the large framework strategy, in that while you're building a framework, your opponent's probably making a lot of surefire territory. Everything from N19 to R19 is pretty much surefire territory, and probably M16 is going to die. And the territory around that most likely will become white's territory. So we are giving up quite a lot, which is probably why we don't, in modern Go, we try to stay away from this strategy. But I do want to show it off because it teaches you a lot of good skills and a lot of ways to evaluate the board. All right, so we've got a nice big framework here. And so basically what black is threatening, saying, okay, white, listen, I'm going to keep building. I'm going to build huge walls. I'm going to grab large sections of the board. It's up to you. You do something. And then white will usually invade. So back to here. We played here, which is really big, right? We extended our framework. And if we were to miss this spot, like let's say we were to go in and defend our framework in the lower right, and then white gets here. Now who has a large framework? Now it looks like white is starting to build the left side of the board. And if we even were to answer this, then white is going to play somewhere over near A. And then white's the one with the bigger framework. So these sort of critical junctures, right, these vital points are super big. And so this will be a vital point. So when we're pushing against each other, this sort of move is a vital point. It gets me ahead of my opponent because otherwise my opponent will get ahead of me. Other moves that white could do to try to come into black's area are like this. And we'll talk about how to deal with these in a second. But once you understand that, like, this looks scary, but like white should be able to make a living group in black's area if white plays his cards right. So this is kind of where the interesting part of the large framework strategy is, because your opponent has to invade, and then do they make it out with their invasion or do they pay a huge price for it? All right, so let's look at it. So let's say white approaches. Let's say black were to pincer like this. The 3-3 point is very open. And in order to keep everything nice and afloat, we would do something like this. And then we would let white have the corner. And then it looks like black is starting to be a little bit concentrated towards the right side of the board. A lot of this, like for example, I would really love Ari to be somewhere else. But as you can see, this is sort of the general strategy. So you want to try to keep consistent. We go back a little bit. Try not to block this way. So this way is pretty good. I mean, in that we make territory. The problem is that like white can easily keep us narrow. So black's area isn't super deep. You can see that black's area of influence, the area of the board that he's threatening to make territory, kind of goes along this line here, then over here, and then there's not, maybe it starts, this is definitely surefire. All right, so that's a lot of territory, but white is from our opponent's perspective. It's nice to be able to just keep our opponent under control without doing any putting ourselves in danger. And this will be a case where white doesn't have to put himself in danger because the lower right is going to live, and this extension move is safe. So as long as we can keep black contained, we're not putting ourselves in danger. So we go back a little bit. So black tried this, try to squeeze the white stone. Black doesn't have to do that. Black could try to attack the white stone. Now this is what we tell our we always learn and go that we want to push our opponent towards our thickness. So our influence, our powers in the upper right, so we're going to try to push them towards it. So this kick move is normally played when black has a Q10 stone. So let's see what happens. So we play like this. And it looks like white is able to live calmly. Now, the problem, black did make some territory in the upper right, but it's very narrow given the amount of stones we've invested. And the lower right is definitely still ripe for the being invaded. White could easily invade it A later and live, and there'd be nothing black could really do about it. The problem with from black's perspective is that black doesn't have any strong influence in the area around B. And because black doesn't have any strong influence in the area around B, white can just walk out because without too much muss and fuss. Let's go back a bit. Let's say white tries this. So black could easily just block. This move is simple. I mean, a lot of beginners try a lot of different things, but this move just closes the door. And then white can play something like this. And again, white is not doing too bad. This shape could be a little bit bad though if black plays something like this. Later on, then we can cut. So white's a little bit not totally settled. But this is not a bad way for black to deal with this. When we have white play this move, it's super easy to just say we close the door. All right, so we've kind of learned a little bit more about how to do large frameworks today. I won't go too much more in a lot of details, but I wanted to kind of go back to this part. This is super important. So just to review our ideas, when our opponent invades a 3-3 like this, we want to make sure our walls point towards each other, not away from each other. That's why we want to block at B, because the wall will face towards our Q10 and Q4 stones, whereas if we block at A, then our wall will not point towards the right direction. So once we get our walls pointing in the correct direction, then we can start to build a large framework. Always make sure to get ahead of your opponent as best you can. Don't miss these vital points. So for example, black wants to play here. Always look towards the edge between your area and your opponent's area. If you can push theirs back and make yours bigger, always go for those things, because even these moves, they're slack and they can lose you the game. I have lost a high level game because I did not push as hard as I should have. It wasn't a bad move. I just should have pushed more to get more, and I lost by a few points. I lost the advantage, the initiative. These moves are the initiative moves. These are the vital points on a large scale, and you need to get some experience to watch out for them. And then after you build something big, you invite your opponent to come in, and then you attack them in order to try to make points. And this is the core of the large framework strategy. Try it out. Again, modern Go, you won't see this kind of play as much, but you know what? We're beginners in Go. We're double-digit queues. We're single-digit queues. We can just go ahead and do this sorts of stuff, and we can learn a lot from it, right? So we don't AlphaGo's style of play is so complicated and out there. I think that learning just the basics is still very good and very instructive. All right, that's it for today, and I'll see you guys next time.